Ethan Carter sat in the passenger seat of the ambulance, fingers drumming anxiously against his knee. First shift. First real call. He had trained for this moment, run through every scenario in the academy, but now it was real. His partner, Jake Reynolds, a seasoned paramedic with a kind of exhaustion in his eyes that only years on the job could carve into a person, glanced over at him. "You look like you're about to puke, rookie." Ethan swallowed hard, shaking his head. "I'm good." Jake smirked. "Sure, let's see if you're still good after your first big one." Before Ethan could respond, the radio crackled to life. Unit 3, multiple vehicle collision on Highway 22. Reports of entrapment and serious injuries. Respond immediately. Jake hit the lights and sirens, yanking the wheel hard as they sped toward the scene. "Baptism by fire, kid," he muttered. Ethan's heartbeat hammered as he clutched the handle on the dashboard. This was it. The second they pulled up, Ethan's stomach twisted. Chaos. 3 cars were completely wrecked. One flipped upside down, another wrapped around a guardrail like a crumpled beer can. People screamed. Some were lying on the pavement, blood pooling beneath them. Firefighters were already prying doors open, trying to reach the trapped victims. The smell of gasoline, burnt rubber, and blood filled the air. Jake grabbed his shoulder. "Rookie, listen, this ain't a drill. Triage first. We help the worst ones first, got it?" Ethan nodded, swallowing the bile rising in his throat. He ran toward the nearest vehicle, a blue sedan, the front completely smashed in. And inside, a teenager sat slumped in the driver's seat, blood dripping down his forehead. His eyes fluttered open, panicked, searching. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. "Hey buddy, I'm Ethan. Can you tell me your name?" The boy's voice was weak but clear. "Nate." Ethan let out a small breath of relief. If he was talking, that meant he still had a chance. "You're doing great, Nate. We're gonna get you out, okay?" Nate let out a shaky laugh. "My mom's gonna kill me." Ethan smiled, just for a second. "Nah, man. Let's just get you out of here first." He didn't know yet that those were the last words Nate would ever hear. The scene was moving fast. Firefighters worked to cut open doors, officers directed traffic, paramedics treated people on the ground. Jake was dealing with another patient, a woman trapped in the flipped car, while Ethan focused on Nate. The kid winced as Ethan assessed him. Broken ribs, heavy bruising on the abdomen, a likely concussion. But he was stable, for now. Then everything changed. Nate's breathing hitched, his pulse slowed. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Nate!" he called, tapping the kid's cheek. Nate blinked slowly, like he was struggling to focus. "I feel weird." Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. This wasn't good. "Stay with me, man." He turned to the nearest firefighter. "We need to get him out now." The firefighter nodded, using the jaws of life to pry the door open. And that's when Nate crashed. His eyes rolled back, his chest stilled. No. "Shit, he's coding!" Ethan moved on instinct. He unbuckled Nate's seatbelt, yanked him out of the car, and started compressions right there on the pavement. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Come on, Nate, breathe." Jake rushed over, dropping to his knees. "Bag him!" Ethan grabbed the bag valve mask, forcing oxygen into Nate's lungs. The heart monitor was screaming flatline. Firefighters hovered nearby, watching with grim faces. Jake pressed the defib pads onto Nate's chest. "Clear!" The boy's body jerked. Ethan stared at the monitor. No pulse. Jake's voice was tight, urgent. "Again!" Another shock. Nothing. Ethan kept pushing harder, faster, desperately. Jake finally reached out, gripping Ethan's wrist. "Kid, he's gone." Ethan froze. His hands hovered over Nate's chest. The weight of it sank into him. Number, not his first patient, not his first real call. But the monitor was still flatlining. And Nate wasn't coming back. The body was covered. The ambulance was loaded. And Ethan couldn't feel his hands. They were back in the rig, but this time the sirens were off. No rushing, no urgency. Just silence. Jake stared out the window, rubbing his jaw. Tough first call? Ethan barely blinked. "We could have done more." Jake sighed. "No, we couldn't." Ethan wasn't so sure, because the last time Nate had looked at him, he was scared, and Ethan had promised he'd be okay. And now, he wasn't anything at all. Back at the station, Ethan sat on the locker room bench, staring at his hands. They were still covered in dried blood. He could hear the captain talking in the background, the official report coming in. The woman in the flipped car survived. The guy from the guardrail, broken leg but alive. And Nate, dead on arrival. Ethan's chest tightened. He had done everything right. He had followed protocol. He had worked the case exactly the way he was trained to. But it still hadn't been enough. Ethan didn't go home right away. Instead, he sat in his truck in the station parking lot, staring at the streetlights. His first call, his first loss. He could still hear Nate's voice. Am I gonna be okay? And worst of all, the way he had said yes, because he had believed it, because he had lied, because he didn't know any better. But he did now, and he knew it would never be the same again. Ethan sat in his truck for what felt like hours, his grip tight on the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The parking lot outside the station was empty now, save for a few night shift stragglers heading in. His uniform was still stained with blood, Nate's blood. He knew he should go home, knew he should strip off his clothes, take a shower, and pretend like he could wash this night away. But he couldn't move, because his hands still felt the weight of Nate's chest. His mind still replayed the last moments, like some kind of sick, inescapable loop. Am I gonna be okay? He should have said no. Maybe then it wouldn't feel like he had lied to a dying kid. A knock on his window made him jump. He turned to see Jake, standing there with 2 cups of coffee, his expression unreadable. Ethan rolled down the window, rubbing at his face. Jake shoved a coffee into his hand. Get out of the truck, rookie. Ethan hesitated, but the look in Jake's eyes, it wasn't a request. They sat on the curb outside the station, steam curling from their coffee cups, the smell sharp against the cold morning air.